Hi, once again, guys. Welcome back to our channel. Um, as promised earlier, we're going to look at grade 10 functions. So I've already done a video or two, I'm not sure, of linear functions. All right, grade 10 linear functions, just the basics. All right, just to make sure you've got your theory in place. So now we're moving on to the parabola. Okay, again, just the basics of all the different types. And then at the end, we'll tackle past paper questions. All right, so you all know that, or you should know that the general equation of a parabola will be something like y is equal to ax squared plus q. And again, the a and the q are just letters, so different textbooks can use different variables. It really doesn't matter. As long as you're going to have that x squared. The x must be squared, and then there will be a constant, and the x squared will have a coefficient. All right. So a parabola, if you sketch it, it's going to give you either a happy face or a sad face. Okay, so that's what you should know. All right. Um, and then, but I want us first to look at each of these variables, what they stand for. Okay, so let's talk about the constant. All right. So again, this is my y-intercept. Okay, so it tells me where my graph cuts the y-axis. It also tells me the vertical shift. All right, I'm going to explain that now. So it's the vertical shift of the graph. Okay. Where is this coming from, this vertical shift story? It's coming from what we call a mother function. Okay, so for example, something like this, and let's say the equation of this graph is y is equal to, let's say, 1x squared. All right, so if this is the equation of the graph, it means that my y-intercept is 0. Okay, so it's 1x squared plus 0. My q is 0 for this graph. So now, if my q is not 0, if, for example, my q is, let's say, -1, it just means that this graph has shifted down 1 unit. Okay, so it will be something like that. And this is -1. So the equation of this graph is what is now, instead of this, it's now y is equal to 1x squared minus 1. So this minus 1 here is the vertical shift. It tells me that this graph shifted down 1 unit. Okay, and the same would apply to if the graph was now here, cutting my y-axis at, let's say, 2. Okay, and can you guess now what the equation of this graph is going to be? Of course, it's going to be y is equal to 1x squared plus 2. Right. So this here is my vertical shift. It tells me from the mother function, what did the graph do? Did it shift up 2 units? If that's the case, then the equation is y is equal to 1x squared plus 2. Or did it shift down 1 unit? In that case, the equation is y is equal to 1x squared minus 1. All right, so that's basically it on the Q. Okay. I want us to look at this A now. Very important. Okay. The A tells us two things. First of all, it tells us the stretch of this graph. Okay, so how wide or how thin it is, how narrow, sorry, or how wide or how narrow it is. Right. So it represents the stretch. In other words, if this number is big, let's say it's a 4, the graph will be wider than when the number is a 2, for example. So what am I saying? Let's say, for example, it looks like that. Let's say this is y is equal to 4x squared, right? That's what the graph looks like. I'm just making an example. So can you guess what y is equal to 2x squared would look like? Of course, it would look something like that. Thinner. Okay. So now y is equal to 2x squared, right? So the A tells me how wide or how narrow the graph is. It's not too important. I haven't seen questions where they ask you what the A means, but it's just good for you to know so that you can compare your answers, and check if your answer is right based on the size of A in comparison to another graph. All right, so that's the first thing that the A tells you. It's the stretch, right? The second thing that the A tells you is whether this graph is happy or sad, right? So what am I saying? I'm saying if my A is a positive number, something like +2, +3, then my graph will be like this. It's going to be happy, right? So this means that my A is bigger than 0. Okay, let's write that where you can see it. My A is bigger than 0. Okay, if the graph is happy. Okay, and then I'm sure you can guess the opposite, the reverse. If my A is a negative number, then my graph is sad. Very easy to remember. If it's negative, it's sad. If it's positive, it's happy. So what does this mean? It means that my A is less than 0. Okay. Right, so that's what the Q means and that's what the A mean. Now, in terms of sketching, we apply the exact same method as we did with the straight line. Okay, we're still going to use the dual intercept method. Okay, so let's do an example. All right, so we're doing an example. They say to you, sketch y is equal to 2x squared minus 8. We're still going to do the dual intercept method. Now remember what the dual means. Dual means 2. So we are finding the intercepts of the graph. In other words, where does it cut the x axis and where does it cut the y axis? And then another thing that I want to mention, which is very important, in grade 10, your graphs, your parabola, will always be symmetrical about the y-axis, right? So we're not answering the question yet, okay? So your graph will always be symmetrical about the y-axis in grade 10 because we are not shifting left or right. Remember, we're only shifting up and down. So you'll always have something like this. Okay, as you can see, it's symmetrical about the y-axis. Will always be my axis of symmetry. So in other words, if this is -3, okay, it means the distance from here to here must be the same as the distance from here to here. So this will have to be +3. Okay, or if you have a graph that goes like that, okay, a sad face. If this is -2, this will have to be +2. That's how it's going to be in grade 10. Okay, so let's now answer this question. They say sketch this. Now, remember I said you use the dual intercept method. Okay, so we need to find where the graph cuts the x-axis and where the graph cuts the y-axis, and then join them with either a happy face or a sad face. Right, so remember I said this here is my y-intercept. So already I know that this graph will cut the y-axis at -8. And I can tell that this is going to be a happy graph because this is a +2, all right? But let's say, for example, you forget that this is the y-intercept, okay? And then you decide to work it out. Okay, so let's do it. Let's find the y-intercept first, and then you'll see that it's actually this, that there's actually no need to work it out. All right, so remember we said, in order to find the y-intercept, we always let x be equal to 0, okay? And you know why? Because every point on the y-axis has an x-coordinate of 0. So I go to my equation where I see an x, I'm going to put 0. So it's going to be y is equal to 2 times 0 all squared minus 8, right? So this means that 0 squared is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, so it's 0 minus 8. And what do you know? My y-intercept is -8. I know that this graph cuts my y-axis at -8, okay? Let's find the x-intercept, okay? X-intercept, what do we say? We say let y equal to 0. Why? Because every point on the x-axis has a y-coordinate of 0. So I go here, where I see a y, I'm going to put a 0. So it's going to be 0 is equal to 2x squared minus 8, right? I've now got a quadratic equation and I need to solve for x. Remember, when solving quadratic equations, you see now the topics are connecting, are coming together. You must make it equal to 0, which we've already done, and then you must factorize, okay? When you're factorizing, the first thing you check is the highest common factor. Highest common factor of these two terms is 2. What goes in my bracket? 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. -8 divided by +2 is -4, right? How do I get rid of this 2? Divide both sides by 2, right? So this will mean 0 is equal to x squared minus 4. We are still factorizing. I've got a difference of 2 squares here. So it means that 0 is equal to, I'm going to need 2 brackets. Difference of 2 squares. Square root of x squared is x, so xx. Square root of 4, 2, 2. Plus, minus. All right? Whenever I have two things multiplied by each other giving me an answer of 0, it means that either this is equal to 0 or this is equal to 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0, which means that x is equal to -2, or x minus 2 is equal to 0, which means that x is equal to 2. So it means that my graph cuts the x-axis at 2 places, -2 and +2, which makes sense, okay? Because it's a smile, right? So it will cut at 2 places. Okay, so we're now ready to sketch. Right, so let's sketch. I need a Cartesian plane, right? We said our y-intercept is -8. So somewhere here, and now you will measure this with a ruler, or if you're using a exercise book with lines, just use the lines of the book. So I know that at -8, my graph cuts the y-axis, and then you will measure this, have an accurate scale. It will cut my x-axis at -2 and at +2, okay? And we know it's a happy face, so it's gonna go like that. Then you just join it with a curve. and it's going to look something like this. And now this is y is equal to 2x squared minus 8. And in a test, they'll usually say, show all the x and y intercepts. So this point here, the coordinate, how do you show them? By giving the coordinates. This will be 2, 0. This one here will be minus 2, 0. And of course, this here will be 0, negative 8. That will give you your full marks. Okay. And then I want us to do an example now where they say, or they draw a graph for us and we need to find the equation. Okay, that's going to be our last little example. All right, so this is our example, and just excuse I know the quality of the videos might not be that good yet because of lighting and other issues, but I'm working on it. All right. So anyway, so this is the example. They say find the equation of this thing. They draw it for you. Okay, so we know that the general equation is y is equal to ax squared plus q, right? So we need to find the a, we need to find the q, because the y and the x are always going to be there. Because like I said, these are the main characters in the story. This thing here is about x and y. Okay, so I know sometimes people will ask, but what does X stand for, or something like what is the value of X, what is the value of Y? We do not know that, and we are not interested in that at the moment. We just want to know how they are related. Okay, so we need to find Q and A. Q is easiest to find because it's the y-intercept, and they tell us where the graph cuts the y-axis. So I can immediately put a positive 4 here. So y is equal to ax squared plus 4. Where am I getting it from? From the y-intercept. I now need to find a, right? So again, I can't find a. I can't say I'm going to solve for a because I've got 3 unknowns here. I need to have 1 unknown. So if I can get a value of x and a value of y to put in here, then I can solve for a. Question, where am I going to get the x and the y? I will get them from any point that the graph goes through, any point that that lies on the line. Okay, so we're not going to use this because we've already used it here. All right, so let's take any of these two. We know that the coordinates of this point are 2, 0, right? This one here is minus 2, 0. So you take any of them and substitute them in here, okay? Let's go with the positives, why not? So instead of y, I'm going to put a 0. So 0 is equal to a 2 squared. Remember to use your brackets, although it wasn't that crucial in this case since a is positive. Well, but I mean, no, it is crucial because it's being multiplied by a. Okay, plus 4, right? So 0 is equal to, let's simplify that. 2 squared is 4. So it's 4 times a, which is 4a plus 4, right? A beautiful linear equation. Solve for a. So take this 4 over to this side. It's going to be minus 4 is equal to 4a. Divide both sides by 4. So it's going to be minus 4 over 4. So my a is equal to negative 1. Okay. So now I can write down the equation. Therefore, the equation of this graph is y is equal to a. My a is negative 1. So negative 1 x squared, or you could have just said negative x squared, plus q. We said my q is 4 plus 4. And that's the equation of this graph. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for this video, but stay, keep checking the channel, because later on we'll do past paper questions where they get more complex. Remember, you will never be asked in a grade 10 paper or exam You'll never be given a question with just one parabola. Okay, so they'll be mixed. You'll have a parabola with a straight line, or a straight line with a hyperbola, or exponential. So they'll always be um, combined. Okay, all right. So that's it for now. And then keep watching. Stay tuned for the basics of an exponential function. Right. Let's chat again later.